Do you ever feel the pull between remembering the past and the next step God calls you to take? Notice this. Numbers chapter 9 shows how Israel both remembers and moves. Passover kept, exceptions provided for the week, and the cloud that tells them exactly when to march. Stay with me and I'll give you 3 biblical unlocks and 2 immediate practices to remember well and to help you learn to move when God says go. In this episode of Biblical Unlocks, this show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now on to some context. Okay, so Numbers chapter 9 stands at the threshold of Israel's wilderness pilgrimage, and it does 2 linked things. The first thing is it reconfirms the Passover in the 2nd year after the Exodus and provides a gracious rule for those who are ceremonially unclean or absent so that they can still observe the feast. We'll see this in the first 14 verses of this chapter. And the second thing it does is it provides operational theology for Israel's travel. The cloud over the tabernacle governed when they stayed and when they moved. If you're joining the series now, think about how this chapter binds memory, right? So the ritual fidelity, so that is participating in the Passover, to the movement, divine timing, and that cloud that is hovering over them, telling them not to abandon the feast, but when God moves, you carry it with you under the cloud. Okay. Let's read the first 5 verses and I'll give you a deep biblical unlock afterwards. The focus here is that the people keep the Passover in the 2nd year. How faithfully do you keep God's memorials, not just once, but habitually? Verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses in the Wilderness of Sinai in the 1st month of the 2nd year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, Let the Israelites keep the Passover at its appointed time. On the 14th day of this month at twilight, you shall keep it at its appointed time, according to all its statutes, and in all its regulations you shall keep it. So Moses told the Israelites that they should keep the Passover. They kept the Passover in the 1st month on the 14th day of the month at twilight in the wilderness of Sinai, just as the Lord had commanded Moses, so the Israelites did. Deep biblical unlock number 1. Ritual serves as a continuing identity. A people remember to remain the people of the Exodus. In this chapter, in these first 5 verses, Israel observes the Passover in the 2nd year at its appointed time. The Passover is not just a one-off anniversary, it is institutionalized so the community continually remembers. Because God knows, right, if we don't remind ourselves continually that God actually saved us, we're going to forget. And in fact, that's actually what we're going to see later on in this chapter. The Israelites are going to grumble and mumble to themselves and get all worked up about the fact that they're in the wilderness and they wish they actually were back in the chains of slavery, because being in the wilderness, the testing period, the waiting period, the season out here is actually worse than what they had experienced. That's what they say. So this ritual actually functions as a way of remembering everything that has happened before, repeatedly reenacting the deliverance that God gave Israel. And Israel keeps its story alive, and that memory shapes their identity and decisions. Okay, verses 6 to 14 now. Now there were certain people who were unclean through touching a corpse, so that they could not keep the Passover on that day. They came before Moses and Aaron on that day and said to him, Although we are unclean through touching a corpse, why must we be kept from presenting the Lord's offering at its appointed time among the Israelites? Moses said to them, Wait, so that I may hear what the Lord will command concerning you. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelites, saying, Any one of you or your descendants who is unclean through touching a corpse, or is away on a journey, shall still keep the Passover to the Lord. In the 2nd month on the 14th day at twilight they shall keep it. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They shall leave none of it until morning, nor break a bone of it. According to all the statute for the Passover they shall keep it. But anyone who is clean and is not on a journey and yet refrains from keeping the Passover shall be cut off from the people for not presenting the Lord's offering at its appointed time. Such a one shall bear the consequences for the sin. Biblical unlock number 2. Mercy is woven into the law. Justice with a space for weakness so that the community's memory does not exclude the vulnerable. Some Israelites here were ceremonially unclean through contact with a corpse or traveling and could not keep the Passover on the set day. Yet, God provides a second remedial opportunity to observe it. The law here is not some brittle, harsh ritualism. It anticipates that humans are going to be frail and may not be able to make provision. So, God, in His mercy, allows the covenant meal to remain accessible. God's rules protects holiness and also builds channels of mercy so that no one remains permanently cut off from that communal memory. This is the important thing here. If you decide on your own that you are clean, right, and you refuse to present the Lord's offering at its appointed time, you shall bear the consequences for the sin. It says this in Numbers chapter 9, verse 13. You will pay the consequences for your sin because you have taken it upon yourself to, even though there is no mitigating circumstances for your decision, you simply refuse to observe the statutes that the Lord has commanded. And if you do that willingly, you will be cut off. And that's not because you are evil. That is because you have done something against God's will, and you're using your own free will to do so. That is, you're using your own free will to detach yourselves from God's presence, God's grace, and God's mercy, because He allows everyone and has moved heaven and earth to restore His relationship with you. And if you refuse to listen to Him, that is on you. God will send you love letters to make sure that you come back to Him. But if you refuse, that is on you. Okay, now verses 14 to 23. Any alien residing among you who wishes to keep the Passover to the Lord shall do so according to the statute of the Passover, according to its regulation. You shall have one statute for both the resident alien and the native of the land. Verse 15. On the day the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the covenant, and from evening until morning it was over the tabernacle, having the appearance of fire. It was always so. The cloud covered it by day, and the appearance of fire by night. Whenever the cloud lifted from over the tent, then the Israelites would set out, and in the place where this cloud settled, the Israelites would camp. At the command of the Lord, the Israelites would set out, and at the command of the Lord they would camp. So as long as the cloud rested over the tabernacle, they would remain in camp. Even when the cloud continued over the tabernacle many days, the Israelites would keep the charge of the Lord and would not set out. Sometimes the cloud would remain a few days over the tabernacle, and according to the command of the Lord they would remain in camp. Then according to the command of the Lord they would set out. Sometimes the cloud would remain from evening until morning, and when the cloud lifted in the morning they would set out. Or if it continued for a day and a night, when the cloud lifted they would set out. Whether it was 2 days or a month or a longer time that the cloud continued over the tabernacle, resting upon it, the Israelites would remain in camp and would not set out. But when it lifted, they would set out. At the command of the Lord they would camp, and at the command of the Lord they would set out. They kept the charge of the Lord at the command of the Lord by Moses. Biblical unlock number 3. The divine presence, God's cloud, is representative of ordaining timing. It's not just location. The cloud covered the tent by day and night, and its lifting or settling signaled precisely when Israel should break camp and when they should stay. The cloud is not a mere ambiance, right? It is God's operational voice, and the theology here is very clear. You do not march by plans alone, but by presence. And the Passover and the present guidance, so that is the ritual memory, the Passover, and the present guidance, the cloud, together form a people that remembers and moves. The cloud ties the past, the tent, to the future, the journey, and God's leading harmonizes both worship and mission. We need to trust in step and remember that the cloud is going to cover with us and is going to guide us into where we need to be. Do we have that level of determination and trust in the Lord? I don't know. Let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. I think the clearest way that this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ is the Passover remembrance and the clouds leading They both point towards Christ because, number one, he is our Passover lamb, the true once-for-all deliverance that our annual memorials recall in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. And he is also the presence that goes before us in the form of the Spirit, guiding the church. Remember in John chapter 14, verses 16 to 17, where Israel kept a meal and watched a cloud, the church keeps the Lord's Supper and follows the Spirit's movement. We read in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, "For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed." And in John chapter 14, verses, I'll just read 15 to 18, which is the promise of the Holy Spirit. "If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him because he abides with you, and he will be in you. I will not leave you orphaned, I am coming to you." So notice, Christ is the Passover lamb who became flesh, dwelt among us, and was sacrificed for our sins. So that's the first part of this chapter. And the second thing, Christ gives us the advocate, the Spirit, to guide us in every moment of our lives. Okay, so let's go through one or two immediate actions that we can apply in our lives today. The first thing is a second Passover, whatever you missed today. So for example, if you've missed a spiritual practice you once valued, maybe it's daily prayer, Sabbath, regular confession, or a family devotion, you should schedule a specific remedial commitment to this week. A short, concrete memorial, a family meal, a focused hour of gratitude, or a public statement to your small group. Treat it as a second Passover. Re-enter the memory rather than letting absence become loss. And the second, set a cloud watch habit this week. That is, a cloud watch, what does that mean? For 5 minutes each morning, pause and ask, "Lord, show me, stay or go." Journal any prompt, a word, direction, calm, or conviction, and use these notes once a week to decide any next step. Is it a conversation, a commitment, a move? The practice trains you to link remembrance, what God has done, to discern movement, what God is doing. Okay, well, that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. Next time, we're going to go through Numbers chapter 10. We're going to see trumpets, marching orders, and public commissioning. If Numbers chapter 9 taught us how to remember and to move by the cloud, Numbers chapter 10 is going to show us the practical soundtrack and the military liturgical form of marching under God's presence. You don't want to miss how trumpet calls make sacred motion audible. So thanks for listening. Numbers chapter 9 teaches us to keep your memories and make room for mercy and follow the presence. If this episode stirred you, do the simple second Passover exercise, restart a good spiritual habit and tell one friend. And try 1 week cloud watch, 5 minutes of prayer each morning and a weekly check of what you've sensed. You've just begun to link remembrance and direction in your life. So, remember well, move when God moves, and let worship shape your march in the wilderness. Also, don't forget to follow and rate the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot. You can always change your mind later. But otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.